KWT slaying.
Salama family, salama. How y'all doing today? Hope you're blessed and highly favored. Mr. Tay, you say hi to fam.
Greetings, family. Peace and blessings.
So one thing I want to add before we get started, when we're dealing with this type of information and other information, I'm gonna tell you, I have a what's the word? An irritation point, and sometimes I don't know if if y'all been following us for a long time, y'all been around for the whole battle with the urban apologists and Berean TV and all those type people. And so, when we were on those channels, we had to deal with gaslighting, a lot of outright lies, misrepresentation, stuff like that. So a lot of times when I'm dealing with people, I don't know what side you on. I don't know if you're coming in as a gaslighter. I don't know if you're coming in as a straight up liar. I don't know if you have an agenda or you just uneducated, right? So sometimes I might come off a little rough because I don't know what camp you in, right? So, if you're just a person looking to learn, that's fine. But sometimes, people put those red herrings out there and think I'm a bite. I'm like, I'm not that dumb. So I'm gonna move on unless Minister Tay you had something you want to say.
Yeah, I just want to add. I mean, I back you up on that. I mean, the whole straw man arguments they put them up for you to have to defend, and it's like it's something you shouldn't have to address. It's like where is your level of research? Before you make a statement, don't say I saw a video. Did you put in some homework? Did you put in some work? People make assumptions about what you're saying, or they come with no evidence at all outside of I feel a certain way, right? Just like Native American Indians. Don't come tell me they us and you can't tie us genetically, but we supposed to be descendants of Jacob. That ain't gonna fly. Don't waste my time, right? So let's go, Minister Cole.
All right, so let me ask you, how many of you all have seen the Truth Unveiled video about, Jerusalem being in Africa? If you have, give me a 1. If you haven't, give me a 2. All right, cool. So, I remember back in the day, at first, I was against some of the stuff that Truth was presenting. But then as I did my research, I adjusted. And see, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to adjust. So I told Truth, I sent him an email. I say, Truth, I say, look, dude, I apologize because I say, you were right on about a lot of this stuff. But I don't agree with everything. And so in one of the videos, Truth showed Jerusalem being in the Kalahari Desert. And on that map, there is a Jerusalem that is in the Kalahari Desert. But it's sort of like if somebody came years later and saw, hey, there's a Jerusalem in America. Is America our home? I know some of you Israelites think we from America. All right. I ain't talking about that. But then you find out, hey, there's a Jerusalem in France, and there's a Jerusalem in Britain. There's a Jerusalem everywhere. Oh, you know what? There's an Israel here. There's an Israel there. There's an Israel everywhere, right? So how do you differentiate between the Israels that were added by people because of culture, because of religion, because of whatever? you have to go through a process, right? So before I continue, let me go back to the map that we were talking about yesterday. All right. All right. So one thing we saw on this map is Israel, right? So the question is, okay, we got Israel here. How do we know that's the biblical Israel? How do we know that he meant it was the biblical Israel? Well, we don't, do we? So then how do we give any validity or credence to the fact that on this map in the mountains, he has Israel? Was he trying to say something? So, like, for instance, the ancient maps, a lot of the maps that Truth had and stuff like that, and a lot of us, when we've done our research, you will find out that a lot of maps, the 1600, 1700, stuff like that, a lot of those maps were requested by the king of Spain, Portugal, France, stuff like that, or Britain. This map is a more recent one, right? It was created well, this is the publication date, 1935, but it was in the late 1800s. And so the Daily Mail requested that this particular map be created. Now, the cartographer, George Phillip, right? He's a reputable cartographer, created this. So, what we have to ask ourselves, well, where did he get his information? What was he trying to say? How much of what we see on these maps apply and are validated through other maps, right? So, as you saw even in the Lim Lam video, some of these areas are the same. Now, in the Lim Lam, if you saw that video, and they got other ones, a lot of these surrounding areas like Ramah and stuff like that were on their maps. You didn't see Israel. So you say, okay, well, we can validate that a lot of these areas are legit because they have the same thing, the same name, same position, same areas. And so then we have to ask, well, how come Israel is here? What was he saying? How come Jerusalem isn't there? Shouldn't Jerusalem be there, right? As opposed to Israel? So we say, okay, well, this was written or created by an English cartographer. Well, really, he was Scottish, right? Cartographer. He's giving us what he knows, what he understands. So as opposed to him saying Jerusalem there, or, he's probably saying things like, okay, this is where Israel is. And why can we make some of these assumptions and analogies and things like that, right? Well, we can make some of these assumptions and analogies because we see some of these biblical names, as I discussed, as well in this area. And we got traditions of Israelites in this area. We know about Eldad the Danite. We got all these things, right? So I say all of this to preface our research methodologies, because the problem is with a lot of people is that they have no methodology. So they say, well, look, Jerusalem is on the map. It's in the Kalahari Desert. We see it. So I believe that that's where Jerusalem is. Well, if Jerusalem is on the map in the Kalahari Desert, which is near Namibia, which is near South Africa, okay, well, where's the surrounding people groups that the Bible talks about? What about the rivers and stuff, like the River Jordan that the Bible talks about? What about what about Egypt? How far is Egypt, the known Egypt? How far is Egypt from the Kalahari? Minister, tell you, how far is Egypt, at least the Egypt we know, from the Kalahari?
I don't recall. I think it's something like 6,000 miles, if I recall,
right?
Something like that.
It was 40. It could be 8, but I think it was like 4,000 plus miles.
Yeah.
So when you look at some of the descriptions in the Bible, you have to use that as a means of deduction. Now, this is where we come in with the scientific method. All right. Now, this is for archaeology, but the methodology applies. Now, understand this. y'all know we developers, right? We program, we deal with data, we write applications, we ask a lot of questions because we have to make an application work. So whether you're, I don't care what business area you're in, whether it's retail, whether it's you know, homes and uh, finance, whatever, we have to know what the business rules are. So here's the scientific method, right? Scientists, including archaeologists, follow a logical process to acquire and interpret data. So how do we find the data and interpret that data? So one of the things that they do, and I'm talking about the Kalahari people and the South Africa people, ooh, look, Jerusalem's on the map. Ooh, I live in South Africa. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, Jerusalem's on the map near Namibia. Oh, guess what? It's desolate. It's in the desert. Ooh, but what does the Bible say it means? Okay, see, that's the problem. See, they make assumptions of what desolate means. But I digress. Let me continue. So scientists, including archaeologists, follow a logical process to acquire and interpret data, the scientific method. Scientists use hypotheses and theories to organize their data and explanations. For scientists, a theory is a systematic explanation that can explain existing data and make predictions about what to expect from new data. What? Make predictions about what to expect from new data. Now, how do we do this, right? We take what we see on the maps, we apply to what we see in the scriptures. Is any of that fit? Does that sort of fit? What about the population groups? What about the, you know, the type of animals? What about the cultures? What about the history of the people and the surrounding people? Is these type of things, right? You got to compare. So an hypothesis is a specific and what? Testable statement about something generally tied to a broader theory about our understanding of the past. Scientists use two different kinds of reasoning, inductive and deductive reasoning. With inductive reasoning, scientists move from the observation of a specific piece of data, right? Like what? Jerusalem on the map by the Kalahari. So they observed the specific piece of data to develop an hypothesis about what that data might mean. With deductive reasoning, the scientists would start by suggesting an hypothesis and then conduct research and search for data to what? Either support or disprove the hypothesis. Now, before I continue, I'm going to ask Minister Tell a question. Minister Tell,
yeah,
when I first started looking at this, where was I looking for Jerusalem?
Yacoba was looking at the Kalahari Desert.
I started looking at the Kalahari Desert.
Now, let me say this. You know, I enjoyed the videos of Truth Unveiled. A lot of the stuff was interesting. You know, I'm a guy of 1,000 questions. I always ask questions. You know, and for, you know, when you start showing me maps in English, I saw, now we have the same situation here, but you build a case. You say, well, okay, did they intentionally put these names in here because they were the ancient locations, or did they put it in here because of that's the name of the area that the Europeans decided to call it? So, for example, there's a Jerusalem, New York. There's a Jerusalem, New York. So if I see Jerusalem, New York on a map, do I say that's the Holy Land, right? So you have to build upon the evidence, and you go where the evidence leads you, right? And so there were many factors that would make me say couldn't be the Kalahari Desert. But Yacoba actually dug into that for a long time. And I didn't, because my biggest holdup was no matter how big I made the kingdom of Egypt, it would never be close enough to Namibia for that to be the Holy Land. I don't care how big we created the radius of Egypt. Egypt would have had to have taken over so much territory that it was unreasonable, right? So Namibia is 2,500 miles away from Cairo, Egypt. You know, it's only 3,000 miles between East Coast and West Coast United States. You see what I'm saying? So it's these kind of deductive reasoning that you have to apply to say, hey, well, that's not reasonable. You know, Jesus and Joseph and Mary brought the Messiah to Egypt from Jerusalem. If that was Namibia, that's impossible, literally impossible, unless they use the jet plane, right? So it's those kind of things. You could erase Namibia off the map, right? And there's other reasons why it became impossible for Namibia to be the location. So go ahead, Minister Yacob.
So as I looked into it, I started agreeing with my brother. I say he's right. So I started looking at other places, and I saw about Ethiopia and stuff. And then some of y'all remember back in the day, I said I got 2 places I'm looking at. Y'all remember that? Some of y'all, if you remember that, give me a 1. If you don't, give me a 2. Y'all remember when I said I'm looking at 2 places? One is over here in South Africa, Namibia, Kalahari, and all that. I said the other is Ethiopia. Y'all remember that, right? And then as I continued to do my research, Ethiopia won. Okay, so let's go back to where I was. All right, so for example, an archaeologist might have a theory that, oh, hold on. Before I do that, I wanted to comment on this. Have you ever heard of the lost city of Kalahari? We're going to talk about that, right? So this statement here is another data point, right? It means nothing. It means nothing without added data to validate the hypothesis, right? That this could be Jerusalem. It means nothing. Okay, so I just wanted to make that comment so we could continue. All right. So, for example, an archaeologist might have a theory that people in southwestern Wisconsin at 1400 AD sought to obtain all of the wild food that they could from the local habitat to supplement what they could grow in their agricultural fields. They might hypothesize that the people ate bullhead catfish from the Mississippi River. To test this, the archaeologists will conduct excavations in the area to look for the bones of the catfish in archaeological context, indicating that the people had been harvesting them. An example would be, okay, the Bible tells me, as I showed you, right? The Bible tells me that the people of Jerusalem buried their people in caves. Does Kalahari have caves where people were being buried? Does Ethiopia have caves where people were being buried? See, this is sort of that process that they were doing with the fish, right? So let me continue. Scientists, including archaeologists, cannot prove their hypothesis to be correct, but they can disprove hypotheses that are incorrect. So that's what I did. I disproved the Namibia. It just didn't fit a lot of the data points, right? So when the data supports an hypothesis, then they have more confidence in their ideas. I have more confidence of Ethiopia because I have more data points, biblical data points, historical data points, okay, traditional cultural data points. All right, so theories that are supported by a lot of data and not disproved by any data are considered powerful explanation. All right, y'all see that, right? Theories that are supported by what? A lot of data and not disproved by any data are considered powerful explanations. Do y'all know I have over 20 plus videos looking at all of this stuff? Looking at Kalahari, looking at Namibia, looking at what the Bible says Jerusalem looks like, the traditions, the culture of the people. It's about the data point. I have a lot of data points. All you have is a name on the map. That's it. All of y'all have about Kalahari is a name on the map. All right, so let's continue. Theories that are supported by a lot of data and not disproved by any data are considered powerful explanations. However, future work may require that these theories be refined or modified to account for new data. The scientific method is a never-ending process of making and refining hypotheses, continually testing them with new data and reformulating them when new data is available. So as I have done, I went through, I looked at the cultures, I looked at the traditions. I saw that Ethiopia buried their people in caves. I looked at the maps, and I looked and saw that that Jerusalem was in a hill or surrounded by mountains, according to the scriptures. I looked at some of the ancient documentations What's the Latrice letter or whatever? I'm going blank right now. Eritreus, the Eritreus, yeah. I looked at the Eritreus letters and saw the descriptions of Jerusalem. And guess what? Ethiopia fits perfectly in the highlands. I looked at the pillars,
the temple artifacts too.
Yeah, I looked at the pillars or the steles. I showed you how Absalom, they built those for kings, right? When they died, like headstones. Guess what? Ethiopia built pillars for their kings, like headstones. So I had to refine my process when I got new data. They don't do that. I got a name on the map. It's in Kalahari. That's Jerusalem. That's all they do. I got an ancient place over there that looks like Jerusalem. That's all they do. No supporting information. All right, let's continue. So here are some of the steps of the scientific method that an archaeologist might use to investigate the past. Choose a problem. Archaeologists are interested in many different aspects of how people lived long ago. They need to ask specific questions and to know what to look for when answering their questions. Examples of questions archaeologists might ask before excavating include: when did people first inhabit this area? Did the past inhabitants interact with other groups? Did the past inhabitants interact with other groups? And if so, how did they interact? I asked, okay, in the Bible, who do we have? The Hittites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, right? We got all these ites, the Canaanites, all these people, Ham, all these people that surrounded and lived around Israel and interacted with Jerusalem and all of these things. That ain't in the Kalahari. But guess what? Look, you got over 40-something different ethnic groups around Ethiopia, period. There's a history of Jews living in that area, period. We got the whole idea of the tribe of Dan being in that area, the Limba being in that area, their whole history, their culture traveling through Ethiopia. We look at the DNA. Our DNA show up where? Starting in Ethiopia. I'm like, come on now. I'm like, these are additional data points that you need to look at. Okay, so we got these data points. Develop a hypothesis. Archaeologists consider their research and development hypotheses. These hypotheses are the potential answers to their original questions. So their hypotheses must be what? Testable. One hypothesis might be that copper from northern Wisconsin was traded to other groups in southern Wisconsin and Illinois. The archaeologists would predict that copper mined in northern Wisconsin would be found in sites in the other areas. So another testable area would be, hey, is there a River Jordan over there in Ethiopia? Yes, there is a River Jordan over there in Ethiopia. Oh, you know what? Are there an area that's surrounded by mountains? Yes, there is an area surrounded by mountains.
Minister
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but someone said Egypt expanded way to Botswana.
Give me the proof. Give me the
that's
evidence.
What I'm saying. Look, you gonna make a statement. I hope you got evidence to prove that. Do you know how far Egypt is? We just told you 2,500 miles from Egypt to Botswana. You telling me an ancient major civilization like Egypt had the ability to control 2,500 miles of territory and made it part of their kingdom? I want to see that. If you have the evidence, look, I'm open. I can change my mind. I could change my opinion on this thing, but I want to see that because I see no evidence that the kingdom of Egypt expanded all the way to Botswana, 2,500 miles long.
See, people make these types of statements with no proof. And some of y'all bite on it like a dog. But there's no proof. I got proof that Egypt went all the way from what we consider modern Egypt all the way down to what we consider Nubia, even into some parts of what we consider Sudan, right? And some parts of Ethiopia. There's no proof, no evidence that Egypt ever went all the way to Botswana.
So
or Zimbabwe,
he got proof.
Huh?
He said, I got proof, and the information comes from a pharaoh. Okay, so Botswana was in a document by a pharaoh. Give it to me. If it wasn't called Botswana during Pharaoh's times, which we know it was not.
Yep.
But if it wasn't, I would expect that you can prove that the pharaoh was talking about Botswana versus some other location, right? That's proper precept upon precept, evidence backing up, the scientific method, right?
What I can show you is that Egypt did trades with other nations. They did trade with people in West Africa and South Africa. I can show you that. I can show you that they did trading. You can't show me that they controlled that entire area. There is nowhere. Let me continue. Write your procedures. Archaeologists list the procedures they will follow in the field and in the lab, the materials they will need, and the attributes they will be examining. The archaeologists might consider specifically what they need to find to support their hypothesis. Test your hypothesis. Archaeologists make observations and collect data according to the procedures they constructed. If their procedures include an excavation, they must collect all the data present at a site. They cannot collect just the information that answers their current question. Let me read that again. They cannot collect just the information that answers their current questions because excavation permanently destroys a site. So don't just look for the answers that support your hypothesis. Look for answers that might hinder your hypothesis. So when I was looking at the Kalahari Desert, I didn't just look at things that's going to support my hypothesis that the Kalahari was where Jerusalem was. Archaeologists then organize the data collected in the field. Artifacts are washed and cataloged. Artifacts, photographs, maps, and field notes are analyzed, and a report of the observation is written. I've done a bunch of videos to make my case. Where's their additional data? Other than Kalahari, Jerusalem being on a map in Kalahari, where's the evidence that is not just another place named Jerusalem? How does it match the biblical interpretation and descriptions of Jerusalem? What about the surrounding people? Are they ancient people that supports that? What about the Cushites? What about the Hamites? You know, the funny thing is, I had one guy say, well, that area, if that's really the area, then God would be wrong because that's a Hamite area you're in, right? So that had to have been Shem's area. That's what he said. That had to have been Shem's area, but that's a Hamite area. So what are you saying? I have a question. Who are the Canaanites descended from? I just want to know who the Canaanites descended from, and who took the Canaanites' land. I'm just asking. See, this is the type of stuff I have to deal with. It's really frustrating sometimes. So the archaeologists next look at their data to see if it supports their hypothesis. If it does, then they can have increased confidence that their idea about the past is correct. If the data doesn't support their hypothesis, then they think about alternative explanations and different hypotheses that might be testable with the data. They may need to conduct further research to test new hypotheses. Where's your new hypothesis? I started off looking at Namibia. I started off looking at South Africa. And guess what? I had to adjust when I got new data. Let me see your teachings and your research with your new data as you adjust your interpretations. I don't see that. Share your conclusions. Archaeologists share the information they have gathered with others through journal, articles, reports, conferences, displays, brochures, videos, lectures, and websites. Have I not shared that with you all? Most of these people who present their case has one video. Now, am I saying that South Africa is not part of the biblical Holy Land? I'm not saying that. I'm saying some of those places there are biblical places. Africa is the biblical land. What we see in the scriptures is the biblical territories, especially what we call today sub-Saharan Africa. So you're going to see names of cities and places in West Africa and South Africa that fit biblical truths. Why? Because it's biblical places. Some of the places that Abraham came from was probably over there in West and South Africa. That don't make it Jerusalem. Remember, I showed you what I believe to be what we would call Israel, because Israel is a group of people. Israel is a group of people. It's not a nation state like we see today over there in the Middle East. It was what we call Negro land. And I showed you the maps that support that theory. But see, some of y'all ain't never saw those videos and you won't comment. But let me continue. All right. So before I continue, Minister, tell you, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah. So if you're not applying scientific method, I mean, you're wasting your time, because basically you have to be prepared to throw away evidence that doesn't support your hypothesis. But if you keep finding things that build up your hypothesis, then you keep going forward, right? So, and I don't know if Minister Yacob are going to get to this, but the Temple of Yeha, right? That's over there in that area, right? In Aksum, Abyssinia, aka Ethiopia area, right? And the Temple of Yeha was known to be an Israelite temple, even though it was pagan, right? It was tied to Yahwism, right? Just like the temple in Elephantine was tied to Yahwism, right? But it was tied to the Israelites. That's why it's called Yeha, right? So that's more supporting evidence about Ethiopia, right? And Ethiopia is already known by many experts to be the place where mankind originated, right? That was the origin of the human civilization, according to some scholars, right? So, I mean, why you think Jerusalem was called the Holy Land, right? Because Jerusalem more than likely is the same area of the Garden of Eden, right? So, you know, step by step, precept upon precept, you know, if you go where the evidence leads you, you know, and if you're not asking questions, then you're just building some kind of cultic following religious thing. We're pursuing the truth, and we're going where the evidence is leading us. And I mean, if anybody thinks that Egypt can stretch all the way to Namibia, I can't help you. And I mean, I don't care how far you stretch it. At what point does the Bible scenario play out properly in that area, right? Where are the landmarks that we see in the Bible? Where are those landmarks in Namibia? Just because, you know, you're going to say Namibia is a desert, so it's wasted. Desolate don't even mean a desert, right? But people make that interpretation. Oh, desolation, it's a desert. No, that was never the land of milk and honey. Namibia was never the land of milk and honey. And the Most High gave us what? A land of milk and honey, right? It was a blessing because it was a bountiful territory. Namibia was never that.
All right. So, and one of the other things that they failed to use the scientific method on is that whole idea of, you know, America being our land, and, you know, that whole Sanders book, Lost Tribes in Promised Land. I read the book. It's full of trash. It ain't nothing but Mormon crap. But some of y'all believe that foolishness and don't do no lick of research. But I digress. So let's look at this right quick. Fair use.
This is it. This is the historical, the biblical, the scriptural, the authentic, the Jerusalem of history. This is the real one, the one that went through the 70 AD destruction by Titus Vespasian. This is it here. This is how it looks. This is its shape. This is its topology. This is Jerusalem, the one of history. And upon immediate view of Jerusalem, we can see and tell that this is the real Jerusalem that fulfills prophecy. Jeremiah chapter 9 verse 11 says that Jerusalem and Judah are supposed to be desolate and uninhabited. And that is what we're looking at here. This Jerusalem is as scriptures say that it is. This is it here. What we are looking at is the burntness, the residue of Jerusalem, of the destruction of Jerusalem. This is it here, the real one. This is our city. This is our land in Judah, Namibia, Southwest Africa, in the Karis region. This is how it look here. Now, this is not the one located in the Middle East. This is not that. That one, that's Hadrian's Jerusalem. And that Jerusalem is a fraudulent location. That's like Universal Studios is built on a studio. Universal Studios built sets for their movies. That's exactly what the Middle East is. A studio set. This one here, this is history. This is historical. This is authentic. This is the real, the scriptural, the biblical Jerusalem that is properly called Agasimba. This is it here. All right, look. Let's go through Jerusalem and take a look and see what remains, what is left. And this is Jerusalem here has been kept hidden from the people, the original black Jews. This has been kept hidden for hundreds of years. The land, the promise, and the people.
All right, that's all I'm gonna show that foolishness. All right, so you could go watch the rest of that video. I'm not gonna even put the link in there. But understand this.
See how the music moves you. Ooh, there's something new here. It's exciting. Listen to the music, right?
Yeah, so it's emotional. It messes with your emotions with the music. Yeah. He draws graphics on this place that has no valid biblical data points, right? He decides where the upper room is. He decides where Jerusalem is on this thing. He decides where Mount Zion is on this thing because it's all burnt. That's what he says. And it's all burnt. But guess what? Desolate don't mean burnt. It don't mean that. And I'm going to show you in the scriptures. All right. So he showed you the Kidron Valley. Where's the proof? Where's the proof? Where's Samaria? Because guess what? Samaria was outside of Jerusalem. Where's Samaria? Where's the other surrounding places? Right? He made up stuff. Let me see your evidence. Let me see your data points. Let me see the historical data point. Let me see the ancient maps. Let me see the surrounding people groups. Let me see the traditions. Let me see the rivers. Let me see, where's the Sea of Galilee? Let me, or any possible representation of the Sea of Galilee. Let me see where Jesus went fishing. Let me see where the caves at, where the bodies at. Let me see somebody who went and did something, who investigated this area. It don't make no sense. But see, this is people who don't use the scientific method. And I told you from the beginning of the show. The problem I have is, one, are you gaslighting me? Are you doing like Berean and the urban apologists? Do you have an agenda? That's not a God agenda. Do you have an agenda to make people who aren't us because you want their money or you want their women? What's your agenda? Because guess what? I don't have an agenda but a Yah agenda. I don't care if Namibia is Jerusalem or Ethiopia Jerusalem. I just care about the truth. But let's continue here so we can get down to right scientific methods. So let's start over here. I got a lot of scriptures I'm going to go through. All right, Lamentations 1:4. The ways of Zion do mourn, because none come to solemn feasts. All her gates are desolate. Her priests sigh, her virgins are afflicted, and she is in bitterness. Her adversaries are the chief. Her enemies prosper, for the Lord had afflicted her. What? For the multitude of her transgressions. Her children, what? Her children are gone into captivity. Her children are going into captivity. So why is Jerusalem desolate? Because Israel ain't there. Oh, you don't believe me? Desolate don't mean burnt. It don't mean it's a desert. It means that our people aren't there. So who's in the land right now? We're going to talk about that. So Samuel, which is desolate, to be desolate, to be appalled, stunned, stupefied, to be desolated, to be deflowered, be deserted. What? To be deserted. What? To be deserted. Be appalled, to be appalled, be awestruck, to be desolated, be made desolate, to be appalled, to be stunned, appalling, causing horror, to devastate, ravage, make desolate, to appall, show horror, to cause to be desolate, to be appalled, to cause oneself desolation. Now, I will say to be deserted is more accurate. Why? Let's go through the scriptures. We're going to see why Jerusalem was deserted. See, a better description would be deserted as opposed to desolate. So because a lot of y'all think desolate means that it's got hit by a nuke. Go ahead, Mr. T.
Yeah, do me a quick favor and in Google type the word desolate definition, and let's see what Google says as well.
All right. All right. Desolate, of a place deserted of people and in a state of bleak and dismal emptiness.
See, emptiness, void of people. Israel went into captivity. That's why the Bible talks about Israel having her Sabbath rest, because her people not there.
Yep. So we're going to continue, right? So we got what desolate is. Okay. So 1 Kings 9:7. Then will I cut off what Israel out of the land which I have given them, and this house which I have hallowed for my name will I cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people. And at this house which is high, everyone that passeth by it shall be astonished and shall hiss, and they shall say, why hath the Lord done thus unto this land and to this house? And they shall answer, because they forsook Yahuwah, their Elohim, who brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and have taken hold upon other gods, and have worshipped them and served them. Therefore hath the Lord brought upon them all this evil. What did he do? He kicked them out of the land. He sent them into captivity. The land became desolate, empty, without people. Oh, you don't believe me? Let me continue. Lamentations 1:4. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed festivals. All her gateways are desolate. Her priests groan. Her young women grieve, and she is in bitter anguish. All right, notice the priests are there. The priests are still there, but they're groaning. Why? Because most of the people are not there, because most of the people went into captivity. Oh, you don't believe me? Let me continue. Ezekiel 6. The word of Yahuwah came to me, son of man, set your face against the mountains of Israel. Okay. The word of the Lord came unto me, son of man, set your face against the mountains of Israel. Prophesy against them and say, you mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yahuwah. This is what the sovereign Lord says to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys. I am about to bring a sword against you, and I will destroy your high places. Your altars will be demolished, and your incense altars will be smashed. And I will slay your people in front of your idols. I will lay the dead bodies of the Israelites in front of their idols, and I will scatter your bones around your altars. Wherever you live, the towns will be laid what? Waste. Wherever you what? Live. The towns around you will be waste, and the high places demolished, so that your altars will be laid waste and devastated. Can we say desolate? Your idols smashed and ruined, your incense altars broken down, and what you have made wiped out. Your people will fall slain among you, and you will know that I am Yahuwah. But I will spare some, for some of you will escape the sword when you are scattered among the lands and nations. Then in the nations where they have been carried captive, those who escape will remember me, how I have been grieved by their adulterous hearts, which have turned away from me, and by their eyes, which have lusted after their idols. They will loathe themselves for the evil they have done, and for all their detestable practices, and they will know that I am Yahuwah. I did not threaten in vain to bring this calamity on you. All right, so Israel is desolate. It is devastated. Oh, you still don't believe me? Let me continue. I'm going to show you. All right. Ezekiel 36. Son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel and say, mountains of Israel, hear the words of Yahuwah. This is what the sovereign Lord says. The enemy said of you, aha, the ancient heights have become our possession. Okay. So the ancient heights, can we say Jerusalem? Can we say Zion has become their possession? All right. So somebody's living there, right? The enemy, right? Come on now. The enemy said the ancient heights have become our possession. Therefore prophesy and say, this is what Yahuwah says, because they ravished and crushed you from every side, so that you became the possession of the rest of the nations. See, they were scattered, right? You became the possessions of the rest of the nations and the object of people's malicious talk and slander. Therefore, mountains of Israel, hear the words of Yahuwah. This is what the sovereign Lord says to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys, to the desolate ruins and the deserted towns. What? To the desolate ruins. What? To the desolate ruins and deserted towns that have been plundered and ridiculed by the rest of the nations around you. Hold on. Stop. Wait a minute. So there's an ancient enemy that came in, took our land, took our possessions. They're living there, kicked us out, put us into captivity, made the land desolate, ruined, but they're still living there. And the deserted towns that have been plundered and ridiculed by the rest of the nations around you. It ain't a desert. It ain't burnt because somebody living there. Oh, you still don't believe me. Let me continue. This is what Yahuwah says. In my burning zeal, I have spoken against the rest of the nations and against all Edom, for with glee and with malice in their hearts, they made my land their own possession, so that they might plunder its pasture land. But it just said it was devastated. It just said that the land was desolate. But yet the enemy has it. Somebody's living there. Come on. Now, it ain't burnt, busted, and crusted. Go ahead, Mr. T.
Can you pull up Bloodline of Judah statement, Jeremiah 9:11? See what he said right there? Put it on the screen. All right. Jeremiah 9:11, I will make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, and I will lay waste to the towns of Judah so no one can live there. So this is a perfect example here of what Minister Yakoba is saying, right? Now, for some reason, they want to make the idea that Jerusalem was a heap of ruin. All of a sudden, it's a desert, right? Because look, Namibia is a desert, period. If Namibia ever was a land of milk and honey, it got nuked to get to the situation it's in. Jeremiah 9:11 is telling you what Jesus said. There will be no stone left upon another. That's it, right? When they came in and sacked Jerusalem, they knocked down every building, every infrastructure, killed anybody there. And so what happens when the land is no longer occupied by people? It becomes a haunt of animals like jackals, right? I will lay waste to the towns of Judah, so no one can live there. So he wiped out Israel so that Israel couldn't go back, and the area was not a place where Israelites were living at that time when they got destroyed.
Minister Tate, didn't I just read here that the land became the possession of their enemies?
Yep.
So apparently somebody there, just that Israel's not there. Because why? Israel went into captivity. It is desolate of our people. I ain't finished, dude. I ain't finished. I'm telling y'all, look, I'm going to put it this way. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Some of y'all don't know how to read. Some of y'all don't know how to do no research.
Hold on. Second Exodus. Come on now. Ethiopian Jews are really the enemy? No, bro. Look, Ethiopian Jews are not Habesha. They are not Amhara and Tigrians. They're not the same people. Ethiopian Jews are Negro, right? I think you're confusing them with the Tigrians and Amharas. That's a different set of people, right? But the Ethiopian Jews are Negroes. They look like you. Okay, go ahead.
You need to look at the people that's on Lake Tana and all that stuff who live on the island called Deborah Zion. They Negroes. A lot of them people who went over there, a lot of the people, if you go look at the people who went over there to Israel from Ethiopia, they were Negroes. They wasn't Habesha. I'm just saying, but let's continue. Verse 6, therefore prophesy concerning the land of Israel and say to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys, this is what Yahuwah says, I speak in my jealous wrath because you have suffered the scorn of nations. Therefore, this is what Yahuwah says, I swear with uplifted hands that the nations around you will also suffer scorn. So there's nations around Israel. Look at Kalahari. It's a desert. Where the people at? Anyway, verse 8. But you, mountains of Israel, will produce branches and fruit for my people Israel, for they will soon come home. Why? Because the home was desolate. And we're going to talk about that. There's another modern description of what we today would call desolate as described in the scriptures. Verse 9. I am concerned for you and will look on you with favor. You will be plowed and sown, and I will cause many people to live on you. Yes, all of Israel. The towns will be inhabited and the ruins built. Why? Because it was desolate. There were ruins. I will increase the number of people and animals living on you, and they will be fruitful and become numerous. I will settle people on you as in the past. It will make you prosper more than before. Then you will know that I am Yahuwah. I will cause people, my people Israel, to live on you. They will possess you, and you will be their inheritance. You will never again deprive them of their children. This is what Yahuwah says, because some say to you, you devour people, talking about the land. You devour people and deprive your nations of its children. Therefore, you will no longer devour people or make your nation childless. Declares Yahuwah, no longer will I make you hear the taunts of the nations, and no longer will you suffer the scorn of peoples or cause your nation to fall, declares Yahuwah. Again, the word of Yahuwah came to me, son of man, when the people of Israel were living in their own land, they defiled it by their conduct and their actions. Their conduct was like a woman's monthly uncleanness in my sight. So I poured out my wrath on them because they had shed blood in the land and because they had defiled it with their idols. I dispersed them among the nations, and they were scattered through the countries. I judged them according to their conduct and their actions. And wherever they went among the nations, they profaned my holy name, for it was said of them, these are the Lord's people, and yet they had to leave his land. Why? Because he made the land desolate of people. I had concern for my holy name, which the people of Israel profaned among the nations where they had gone. Therefore say to the Israelites, this is what the sovereign Lord says, it is not for your sake, people of Israel, that I'm going to do these things, but for the sake of my holy name, which you have profaned among the nations where you have gone, I will show you the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations. The name you have profaned among them, then the nations will know that I am Yahuwah, declares the Lord, when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. For I will take you out of the nations, I will gather you from all nations and bring you back into your own land. See, once we come back, it's no longer desolate. The ruined places are what? Going to be rebuilt. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people and I will be your God. I will save you from all your uncleanness. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful and will not bring famine upon you. What? There was famine in the land. Why? Because it was desolate. There was very few people in the land. I will increase the fruit of the trees and crops of the field so that you will no longer suffer disgrace among the nations because of famine. I'm going to pause right there for a second because I want to show something. Y'all remember this? These ruins, right? The ruins are going to be rebuilt. This is the ruins in Ethiopia. The ruins are going to be rebuilt. The ruins are going to be rebuilt. So let's continue. So let me show you, where is it? I know I had it here. Did I move it? Yeah, there we go. That's where I want to go. All right. So what we just saw, let me get back where I was. I will call for the grain and make it plentiful and will not bring famine upon you. So there was famine in the land when it became desolate, right? More proof that Ethiopia is the location. 1980s. What caused the 80s Ethiopian famine? A perfect storm of adverse events led to the Ethiopia famine, recurring drought, failed harvest, food scarcity, conflict that kept aid from reaching people in the occupied territory, and government policies that relocated families and routed relief to certain areas. Where in Ethiopia was the famine located? The worst effects of drought and deprivation were in northern Ethiopia, where there were also border conflicts. Everybody knows about the famine of Ethiopia. That's all we saw in the early 80s, right? Dealing with famine in Ethiopia. Now, back to where we were. So back to where we were, I will call for the grain and make it plentiful and will not bring famine upon you. I will increase the fruit of the trees and crops of the field so that you will no longer what? Suffer disgrace what? Among the nations because of the famine. So what happened in Ethiopia? Remember the little kids with the swollen bellies? Remember the kids with the flies? A lot of those were Hebrew Israelites. And guess what? The nations had to what? Send them food. They were a disgrace to look at because the judgment on their land because of the famine. But let's continue. Then you will remember your evil ways and wicked deeds, and you will loathe yourselves for your sins and detestable practices. I want you to know that I am not doing this for your sake, declares Yahuwah. Be ashamed and disgraced for your conduct, people of Israel. This is what Yahuwah says. On the day I cleanse you from all your sins, I will resettle your towns and what? The ruins. I showed you the ruins. The ruins will be rebuilt. I showed you the ruins. They will be rebuilt. The desolate land will be cultivated instead of lying desolate in the sight of all who pass through it. Did you not see the images I sent you? I showed you? Was it not desolate? Weren't the ruins there? People walk by and say, ooh, look at these steles or these pillars. They're all broken. Look at the land, right? That land wasn't growing nothing. That's over there in northern Ethiopia, over there near the Yeha area. But I digress. So the desolate land will be cultivated instead of lying desolate in the sight of all who pass through it. They will say this. So apparently somebody passing through the desolate land. Y'all say it's burnt, right? Y'all saying it's burnt, but somebody passing through it, looking at it. They say this land that's was laid waste has become like the Garden of Eden. The cities that were what? Lying in ruins. The what? The cities that were lying in ruins. I showed you the ruins. Desolate and destroyed are now fortified and inhabited. Then the nations around you, what? There's nations around them. Are there nations surrounding Kalahari? I don't think so. It's a desert. The nations around you that remain will know that I, Yahuwah, have rebuilt what was destroyed and have replanted what was desolate. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Once again, I will yield to Israel's plea and do this for them. I will make their people as numerous as sheep, as numerous as flocks of offerings at Jerusalem during her appointed festivals. So will the ruined cities be filled with flocks of people. Then they will know that I am Yahuwah. Isaiah 5:6, I will make it a wasteland, neither pruned nor cultivated, right? It's not pruned or cultivated, and briars and thorns will grow there. I will command the clouds not to rain on it. Can we say famine? Let me show you the ruin. Let me show you the ruins one more time.
I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Ethiopia was never colonized. How can it be Jerusalem?
What? The
Yeah,
Romans occupied it.
We got
Italy,
evidence that the Romans occupied that territory.
Yeah, there's evidence that the Romans. Go look at my other videos. I showed you that Romans were in that area. I showed you that Rome controlled what we call that area over by Yeha. Rome controlled that.
Yeah, so before y'all come to a conclusion, y'all should go watch those 20 videos Yakoba did. He has receipts. Okay,
I proved that they were occupied by Rome.
Right,
dude.
He has the proof, and I mean, if you're looking for truth, you gotta go look at the videos. You really can't just go by your feelings because you want to say Sonini, not Sonini stuff, right? I mean, everybody got their own name for Yah, and some call him Sonini, right? But that ain't the biblical name. Okay.
And look, here's the thing. The reason why they wanted Jerusalem, one of the reasons, let's say, they wanted Jerusalem because it was a major trading area. All of East Africa was a major trading area, which Rome controlled all of that area. All of that area we now call East Africa. Rome controlled that. Go do some research, please. See, this is what kills me. Y'all want to make statements and don't do not a lick of research. I didn't did it all for you, but you can't even.
He did the research for you.
Isaiah 49:19-26. Though you were ruined and made desolate, and your land laid waste, now you will be too small for your people, and those who devour you will be far away. The children born during your bereavement will yet say in your hearing, this place is too small for us. Wait, stop. See, people want to read over stuff, right? Verse 19 says, though you were ruined and made desolate, and your land laid waste, now it's not going to be laid waste no more. Now it's not going to be desolate anymore. Why? Because people coming home. Now you will be too small for your people, and those who devour you will be far away. The children born during your bereavement will yet say in your hearing, this place is too small for us. Give us more space to live in. Then you will say in your heart, who bore me these? Where did they come from? Because they weren't here. They weren't in this land. I was bereaved and barren. What? Why? Because she was desolate. No people. I was exiled and rejected. The people were kicked out. Who brought these up? Where did people come from? I was left all alone, but these, where had they come from? Who are these descendants of the ancient people who used to live here? Where did they come from? Because I don't know them. They weren't living on this land. Where they come from? Because I was desolate of what? People. I'm sorry, y'all. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to say. Let's continue. This is what Yahuwah says. See, I will beckon to the nations. I will lift up my banner to the peoples. They will bring your sons in their arms and carry your daughters on their hips. Kings will be your foster fathers and their queens your nursing mothers. So now Israel is not going to be desolate. Why? Because people coming home. So by inference, Israel became desolate. And I showed you the scriptures. Israel became desolate when we were kicked out. They will bow down before you with their faces to the ground. They will lick the dust at your feet. Then you will know that I am Yahuwah. Those who hope in me will not be disappointed. Can plunder be taken from warriors or captives be rescued from the fierce? But this is what Yahuwah says. Yes, captives will be taken from warriors and plunder retrieved from the fierce. I will contend with those who contend with you, and your children I will save. So the children are the ones who are coming home. It's the descendants of our ancestors. It is us. So we're going to populate the land, and it will no longer be deprived of people. So therefore, it will no longer be desolate. It does not mean burnt. It doesn't necessarily mean a desert. I'm not saying in some instances you can't use it, but in the biblical case, it's devoid of people. I will make your oppressors eat their own flesh. They will be drunk on their own blood as with wine. Then all mankind will know that I, Yahuwah, am your Savior, your Redeemer, the Mighty One of Jacob. All right. So the land of Israel became desolate. It was devoid of people. Now, let me give you a modern concept of the word for desolation, right? Because some of y'all have a hard time visualizing what that means. This right here, what I'm about to show you, is desolation. A ghost town. A modern term for desolation would be a ghost town. A ghost town is a term used to describe an abandoned and deserted town or settlement that was once inhabited by a significant number of people, but is now largely or entirely empty. See, largely or entirely empty, not completely, but largely or entirely empty. Desolate, ghost town, same thing. Ghost towns can be found all over the world and may be the result of a variety of factors, such as the depletion of natural resources. Can we say famine? Economic decline, natural disasters. Can we say famine? Or social and political upheaval. Can we say war? In many cases, ghost towns are the remnants of former mining. This is in America, right? In other places. Former mining, logging, and farming communities that were abandoned as people moved on to other areas in search of better opportunities. So ghost towns is really an American concept, but so you can relate with the Bible saying when it says desolate, it's saying ghost towns. These towns may have once been bustling with activity and commerce, but as industries declined, so too did the population, leaving behind empty buildings and infrastructure. Today, many ghost towns have become tourist attractions, with visitors coming to explore the abandoned buildings and learn about the history of the area. So the Bible says those who what? Walk through Jerusalem will see what? Her ruins. Why? Because she's desolate. Why? Because Jerusalem has what? Abandoned buildings. It has broken down buildings. It has destroyed stelae or pillars. So some ghost towns have been repurposed for other uses. All right. So that's for the American mind, right? So you can see what that means. All right. So a ghost town. So picture Jerusalem, picture Ethiopia with the images I showed you. It is desolate. Nobody's there. Right? So you got bristles and you got thorns because nobody's keeping up the land. The buildings are falling. The land is desolate. So when the Bible is talking about desolation, it's not talking about burnt. It's talking about a ghost town. So let me go back. And there's a lot more. I wish I could have found the video I was looking for that showed a lot more of the areas of Ethiopia. But like I said, it is desolate. It is ruins. These are ruins. They're going to be rebuilt. It's like a ghost town. So the thing is this, and this is the end of my presentation. If you use the scientific method, you're going to take all of the things you have learned and you're going to bring them together and you're going to make an hypothesis. and you're going to take what the Bible says along with the culture, the surrounding areas, the history of the people, all these things, even their enemies, the surrounding nations, and come to determination of whether or not this is the place. I've given you the letter of Atreus. I've shown you the Haggadah maps. I've showed you the Negro land maps. I've showed you, you just name it. I mean, they got olive trees on the hills there. They got the same name, the surrounding nations around there, Rama and things like that. I showed you that. Some of y'all don't agree with it, but that's Somali means Samuel. I'm showing you how you get the data points and you build your hypothesis of where Jerusalem is. Like I said, for those who believe that Namibia or the Kalahari Desert or South Africa is where Jerusalem is, let's see the rest of your data points. I have 20 plus videos with my data points. You will not win. You can't win. I've looked at your evidence. I've looked at what's out there. You can't win. The worst thing is the lack of the scientific method. Why? Because then we cannot talk on the same level. You're talking at elementary school level, and I'm talking at PhD level. We can't have a communication. You're saying, look at this ruin in Namibia, and that's all you got. You're saying, look at this one map, and it says Jerusalem, and that's all you got. Well, what if I show you a map that shows Jerusalem in America? You're going to say that's it? Some of y'all will. This is the problem. See, some of us who are at the PhD level, we can have a communication, we can have an understanding, we can discuss the concepts. I understand that some things is an educational issue. I understand that. And so therefore, we're going to have a communication problem. But then we have those who are gaslighting, those who have an agenda, those who are looking for followers, those who want to do their own will. See, like I say, I don't have a dog in this fight. Look, if Namibia was where Jerusalem is, I don't care. Cool, I'm good. If Ethiopia where it is, if South Africa where it is, I'm good. But that's not what the data shows. But don't come to me, because what really irritates me is that you don't use the scientific method. Ooh, Jerusalem on the map, that ain't enough for me. Where's Egypt? How long did it take to get to Egypt? What does desolate mean? I showed you what desolate means. Where's the Sea of Galilee? Where's the Jordan River? Where's the surrounding nations that the Bible talk about? All of that is there in Ethiopia. Where's the caves like that where Lazarus was buried? All of that is in Ethiopia. Where's the traditions of the people who surrounded the area? Because guess what? All of the Israelites didn't leave the surrounding areas, mind you. We know that. Eldad the Danite tells you that. What about the video I showed you of the guys on Lake Tana who had the temple instruments? They had the silver trumpets. They had the lavers. Why is all of that over there in Ethiopia? Why does Ethiopia have a history of having the Ark of the Covenant? Why does Ethiopia have the oldest quote-unquote Christian books or Bible? See, you don't have none of that over there in Namibia, none of that over there in South Africa. Now, does South Africa have some biblical territories? Yes, they do. But you can't say just because South Africa has some biblical territories that's where Jerusalem is. The scientific method needs to be used. Otherwise, we can't have a conversation. The scientific method needs to be used. Otherwise, don't bother me. The scientific method needs to be used. Otherwise, don't email me. The scientific method needs to be used. Otherwise, don't comment on my videos. The scientific method needs to be used. Otherwise, I think you lying and gaslighting me. The scientific method needs to be used. Otherwise, I think you're another urban apologist. I was one of the first ones who talked about Roman coins being found in South Africa. It still don't mean nothing but that they traded with them. I've done the research. Go watch my video. See, this what irritates me. Every question you got, I didn't answer. But here's the thing. It ain't about me. It's about truth. See, I told y'all I'm about truth. That's all I care about. I don't care about nothing else. I don't care about whether you like me. I don't care if you hate me. I don't give a crap. I care about the Most High, because he gonna judge all of y'all that ain't doing the work and being diligent and being faithful unto the end. He gonna judge all of y'all if you got an agenda other than his agenda. He gonna judge all of y'all if you love camp more than his word. He gonna judge all of y'all if you love your little cliques other than him. I'm telling you. Y'all can't beat my research. I'm sorry, because I use the scientific method. Minister, tell you any final comment?
Yep. So I want you guys to pull up Google Maps or Google Earth when you get a chance, and look across Namibia. So in Namibia, what I did in ChatGPT, I use it. I ask questions. I say, hey,
hold on one second, Minister Tate. Right after this hot sauce, I want you to come on here, and we're gonna talk about your basic information that hasn't been answered, because I guarantee you ain't watched my videos.
On up here.
I'm gonna put the link out there. I want you to come on here. Let's talk, because y'all do this type of stuff and you don't clarify. Oh, the basic information hasn't been answered. What information? What information? List it. I'm gonna put the link out there. Go ahead, Mr. T.
Just for hot sauce. So anyway, I asked ChatGPT. I said, "Is Namibia mostly desert?" Right? I already didn't know because I use Google Earth. Here's the response: yes, Namibia is mostly desert, with a significant portion of the country covered by the Namib Desert and the Kalahari Desert. The Namib Desert, which stretches along the entire Atlantic coast of Namibia, is considered one of the oldest deserts in the world. So do you understand that that whole coast is desert? So there's nowhere along the coast you're going to say the apostles were fishing off of that coast, right? It's all desert. Go to Google Earth and look that up, right? You just got to do some research and some thinking. I don't know. People got an agenda for sure, but here. So look, Ezekiel 38. When we go back to the land, thus said the Lord God, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. You think this Namibia? I will go to them that are at rest. You resting in the desert, huh? That dwell safely. You dwelling safely in the desert, even though it's supposed to be a land of milk and honey. All of them dwelling without walls or gates, having neither bars nor gates. To take a spoil. What spoil? What you got in the desert? You got something in the desert with some gold under the sand? And to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited. You inhabiting. Now, that's why it's important to know what desolate means. The place that was once without people, that what is now inhabited by people. And upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. So you're dwelling in the midst of the land, and you got cattle and goods in the desert. Come on now, family. Minister Yacoba, go ahead.
All right, hot sauce. That's the link. Only hot sauce, fam. All right, hot sauce. What basic information we haven't covered?
Yeah, shalom. So first, let me say this. I saw all the videos you've done on Odyssey about this. I saw all the videos you've done on this here on YouTube. And I also want to say this: I have no idea where it is. I don't claim to know, so I'm asking this out of sincerity, not to like prove right or wrong. So I just have two simple questions that I didn't see in the videos on Odyssey and the videos here. So when we talk about the Gentiles will trample Jerusalem under the feet, right? Ethiopia claims to have a history of they have never been conquered. They have never been conquered. They're one of the only African countries that has never been conquered. And the second question I have is that, so if we're saying that Ethiopia is the place, then are we also saying that the people there now who are inhabited are not the people or imposters? Because according to the definition earlier, you said desolate, meaning the people have been removed, and that's it.
It's
All
only
right, so
can I say something?
go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I did post in the chat, if you must have missed it, that in actuality, Ethiopia was colonized, right? They say it wasn't, but
By
it was
Italy.
colonized. Hold on. It was colonized by the Italians for 5 years, right? From the period of, let me get that date I had. Let's see. 1936 to 1941, the Italians controlled it. Now, on top of that, let me tell you this. Before that, in the late 1800s, about 1890 something, King Tawada, which is equivalent to King Theodore, had a war with Britain, right? And they had a tough war with Britain over that land. Now, the argument is that King Tawada had kidnapped some British people, and the British people went to war to get their kidnapped people. That's crap, right? They were occupiers trying to colonize, and King Tawada fought them to protect his land in the late 1800s. And after that, in around 1935, Italian came in and they occupied that land from 1936 to 1941. There's actually videos where you can see the Italians occupying and controlling that land and the Ethiopians serving them as servants. So theoretically, this was colonization. It just lasted for a short time.
Okay, but I'm thinking more of 70 AD, but I did miss that in the chat. I was just listening. I
Okay,
wasn't
so
looking at the chat at the time.
So
of
I
this
want to
video.
add to that is I also covered in one of my videos, maybe you missed it, was that, and you probably remember some of this throughout history. You know how Rome occupied a lot of the what they call East Africa, right? But they say Northeast Africa.
Northeast, yeah.
Yeah. So in my videos, I've shown that they occupied the same territory where Yeha is. Okay, in Ethiopia. That the Romans occupied that. I've shown that. You might have missed that one.
Which video? Because I don't remember that, because I remember seeing a video on Odyssey, 2 videos on Odysseys, and 3 videos here. Okay. Then I must have missed it, because I sincerely watched all of them.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Send me your. Do I have your email, Hassel?
I'll put it in the back chat. Okay. So then my second question would be: so are we saying that the people there, like the Ethiopian Jews and the people there now, so we're saying those people right now are strangers?
Yeah, like even the ruling class. A lot of the people we see, like, here's my opinion, right?
Like Haile Selassie and all of those guys.
I believe Haile Selassie and them are not Israelites. I believe Haile Selassie, just my opinion, right? Eat the meat, spit out the bones. I believe Haile Selassie and them may be Edomites. That's just my opinion, right? Because a lot of them were associated with Rome, right? Same thing with the Orthodox Tawahedo Church, right? A lot of them are associated with, with the Roman Church. And so if you look at the people who were in poverty, like in what's that area? Eritrea. Yeah, in Eritrea in the Goran area, I think it is. A lot of those were Israelites, right? Those are the people who were poor and poverty stricken, and the ones who were in the famine and starving, and who are persecuted by the surrounding nations. So there's over 40 different ethnic groups in what they call Ethiopia. So
Right,
yes,
right.
yeah.
Right.
So most of the people who are ruling right now are not Israel.
So
And those
well,
people are
just
not living in Jerusalem today, right? They're living outside the
Yeah.
areas of Jerusalem.
well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, I know they're living outside. Well, yeah, it says Jerusalem. Okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Okay, I don't have any other questions, but okay, so I'll definitely look at the link what you email me, and I'll take another look. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Hasso. All right, fam. So, the thing is, I have done the research and I probably covered probably any question you can have. I mean, there may be one or two, but I'm pretty thorough, right? Because I asked the same questions and I need to find answers to my own questions, right? So that's why I go as in depth as I do. And like I told y'all before, like my brother and I told you, we're good at chess. There's nothing we do half a, right? We don't half a nothing, right? We put our all into everything we do. That's why we're very good programmers as well, right? We're very good at what we do because we don't have to do anything, right?
Minister
And so
Yacoba,
this,
can I interrupt you for a second?
go ahead.
So Joseph Conley said, "Are you serious about 5 years of occupation fits the scriptures in the Bible?" Shalom. Did I say that? He asked, was that they wouldn't? He said they were never colonized. I said they were, and I proved it. Period. What that has to do with the Bible?
See,
Am I missing something, Minister Yacoba?
This is what I mean. This is what I mean by either education problem or an agenda. I don't know which one it is. Right? It's either education problem or a listing problem, or he got an agenda. Because every time he come on here, every time he come on here, he got a negative statement, but no proof. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? He takes a position, hasn't done no research. He takes a position, he got a comment on everything, but don't have no studies, no papers, no research, no historical data, no nothing. He either has an agenda or he got listening problems. And this is how they do. Yeah, ADHD. Some people got ADHD.
Thank you, Portuguese Angolan Haitian. He said, laugh out loud. No, you did not say that you did. Wait, hold on. I'm going too fast.
You put it on there. Who said it?
You didn't put it with the Bible. So he said, I did not associate it with the Bible. And that's the point. I just answered the question. So I'm like, somebody paying attention.
See, look, I think a lot of Israel understands, right? Because a lot of Israel want truth. A lot of Israel is seeking truth, right? So they're listening, they're doing their research, they're being like the Bereans. But then you got these other people who have like they're agents and they got agendas. And then it's not a Yah agenda. I told y'all, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't care if it's South Africa. I don't care if it's Namibia. I don't care if it's Ethiopia. Heck, I don't even care if it's America. I'm just about truth. Go ahead, Minister.
That's all. Look, we don't really care like that. Just don't be telling us we didn't do our work. Yeah, come with some receipts so we can have a conversation. And if you have some good arguments, we'll acknowledge it. We'll say, hey, well, maybe they got an argument here. Maybe it's this area because of these things. We're not shy of saying that. It don't have to be Ethiopia. It's just that Ethiopia is fitting all the things we see in the Bible, right? And I mean, there are references to that area being Israel. Today, they call it the second Jerusalem, right? But in reality, it's the original Jerusalem. You see? I mean, so it at least on the simple side had a reputation of at least being called the second Jerusalem to this very day, right? Why is that? In reality, it's the first Jerusalem. I think the problem is that a lot of those Ethiopians that control that area, they still want to commit, they still want to perform their aliyah, their pilgrimages to that land, and they do it on a regular basis. And they weren't going to let the cabal or the European powers stop them from doing that. So I think the trade-off was, hey, let's just call it second Jerusalem. Just don't let those Negroes scattered around the world know that where the real land is, and we good. And I think that's been the secret, is that you don't say nothing, I won't say nothing. You can go ahead and have your pilgrimages to Second Jerusalem, and we won't bother you. And I think that's been the deal, Minister Cook.
So, quick question, Minister Tate. So, I see somebody in the back room. Do you want to let them in, or do you want to do a future Q&A or something? If
let them in, let them in. Let's do this right now.
All right,
I'm okay with it.
Hello, Cindy.
Shalom, shalom. Can you both hear me, Minister Yakoba and Minister Teyu? Shalom,
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. How you doing?
Good. How are both of you? I'm sitting in my car. This was a great teaching. Thank you both. I have a question, a legitimate question, just like the other guy said. This is no pun, no nothing, just trying to learn about Mount Zion. I have a friend from Africa, from Kenya, and he's an older gentleman, now in his 80s. And he told me to always remember that Mount Zion is Mount Kilimanjaro. What are your thoughts on that? I mentioned it over in Kara's room maybe a couple months ago, and it was a lady in there trying to debunk it, and I was like, she don't know what she's talking about. And she's over in the land, but I didn't feel like she, knew what she
Can
was
I
talking
ask you a
about. What are your,
question?
absolutely.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot from the Kenyans and the sages of Mount Kenya. Could it have been Mount Kenya and not Mount Kilimanjaro? Because Mount Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania. So could it have been Mount Kenya?
Here's the thing. Mount Kilimanjaro borders, from what I understood, was like Tanzania, Kenya, and the one you just said, supposedly.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was
so-
just wondering because most Kenyans usually refer to Mount Kenya as Zion. So I was just wondering if. Okay.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah,
and if you don't know, not that I'm putting all the work on you, I'm sorry, but if you can find out and do a great teaching on it, because I'll be here.
So just to let you know, sister, I've been looking into that for a long time. I don't have any definitives. As my brother said, a lot of people say it's Mount Kenya. I can't say it's not. And could it be Kilimanjaro? Maybe, right? I really don't know. But if you look at the historical, like let's say the biblical examples of where the Bible says Judah was, and where Jerusalem was, and where Mount Zion was, it could have been Kilimanjaro, in my opinion, because of where Kenya is located. But I really don't know, because there's a area on an old map called what is it called? Ba Judah, and Ba Judah is up there in the area, right in that area by Sudan and Ethiopia. So it's all speculative. There's no hard evidence. I wouldn't say it's not, but Mount Kenya could be as well.
Yeah, I would say too. Because the Kikuyu, they control that mountain, and they do have
yes,
holy men.
The gentleman who told me was Kikuyu. You're right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and so more than likely he was saying Mount Kenya was the Holy Land. I mean,
that's what most Kenyans believe.
Yeah, most of them say it's Mount Kenya, but I would say this: like over the years, when I would challenge my brother on some things, I kept saying, how far can we increase the radius of ancient Egypt and still have it where Jesus and Mary and Joseph could travel there, right? At some point, the distance gets so outrageous that you have to erase the idea. So the distance between Kenya and modern Egypt is a problem. Now, if true ancient Egypt had more territory, then that would increase the probability that Mount Kenya was Zion. At this point, though, I think what Yakoba, the letter of Atreus, is that what it is?
Yeah, Eritreus.
That letter describes the area of Jerusalem where the temple was and how they navigated to get there, and how they had these cisterns that all the sacrificial blood would drain down into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And Ethiopia has that, right? We've looked at the maps and looked at the mountains, and it is so close to what he described that it gives us, as far as the Kikuyu, I mean, I can't erase their position or their argument. We're just trying to go where the evidence that we have leads us, right? And so we just have more evidence leading us to Ethiopia territory right now.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'd have to go with the with Mount Kenya just because of the locals and their historical
Mount Kenya or
beliefs.
Ethiopia?
Mount Kenya. I'm sorry, did I say Ethiopia? I would say
No,
for
I was
Zion.
asking. You
I was
said I
talking
would.
about Zion, the mountain,
Uh-huh.
because
Yeah.
I just really don't know. But I mean, the area where the temple was supposed to be on Zion, right? Based upon our understanding. So if that's the case, then it have to be on the highlands of Ethiopia. So I don't know, right? I really don't know. I don't have enough evidence to really make a decision. It could be either place. I don't know.
So if there's some Kikuyu out there, look, if you have information, or if you have one of your priests who could talk to us and send us some information, we open to that. It's just that there isn't much information about Mount Kenya and the holy men of that mountain, and we don't know enough about them. So we're just going where evidence leads at this time.
Yeah, I mean, the highlands of Ethiopia could be considered that as well. I really don't know. I just I just know based upon the history that some of the priest of the Hebrew Israelite priests that lived in the area, they were up there in the highlands of Ethiopia, and they said that the temples was up that way. So I don't really know, right? So let me let you go, Sister Cindy. We got a few people back here. All right, so
thank you both. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, New Being Me, how's it going?
It's going great, blessed brethren. I'm just thank you so much for this investigation. I've been watching y'all break this down for 2 years. My husband and I have been in Mexico and Southern California, Northern California. I'm just excited that it's almost that trod, just going through that desert. I'm just really happy that y'all are getting the information. That information is coming towards y'all. I don't want to interrupt, but my husband is definitely willing to speak to y'all on the side note later on some other business, so that we can really kind of talk about, really unpack why would you think His Majesty would be part of the Roman Empire when he went against Rome and the Vatican directly. So again, I had sent you guys some information, and again, it's like Christ saying, a house divided against itself shall not stand. So this was some historical things that was happening in real time in 1931, and I had forwarded y'all some information, and I'm really glad. I hope that you guys have time to really divulge.
I can answer you right quick, just my opinion.
Well, he's here right here, but he didn't want to interrupt. But sure, you can answer, but he's willing to, so we can sit down and you guys can break it out, scripture by scripture, historical, line by line, precept by precept, culture by culture, tradition by tradition, because I'm really happy that you're doing this, but I'm kind of in a disparaging thing, like, well, I don't think it's fair to put His Majesty or Haile Selassie, whatever you want to call him. Again, we're Ethiopians, our family's Ethiopian. So he's His Majesty, and again, he's still from a Christian kingdom. So we'll just say Haile Selassie for now.
I liked Haile Selassie, and I liked the fact that he was standing with the blacks in America and things like that, and was
all
allowing
Africans
them to
across
move
the
home.
world.
Yes. What's that?
I said Africans across the world, and even the Ethiopian church was really much in charge of validating the Black Hebrew Israelites. Do you understand that?
Yeah. Look, I don't have
and that.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you why I believe what I do. Don't mean I'm correct,
okay.
Right? But basically, the curses were on Judah, which was on Israel, and those curses really wasn't on them, right? Because they were kings and queens, and even his his wife. Now she really looked
Empress
Negro.
Empress Menenin was
Yeah,
phenomenal.
his wife really looked Negro, right? She looked like Israel. But the fact that the curses, because like even the royal house back in the day, they used to go and bow before Haile Selassie and the empress and the king before then. And so, Israel was kicked out the land, right? And wasn't ruling anything. So I'm like, if we go with the scriptures, then he shouldn't have been in power, right? That's just my opinion. And so
I understand, and I can understand that. That's why we can talk a little bit more about it. But
okay,
you have to also understand that the story goes back to First Kings when Solomon met the Queen of Sheba. After their love story, she got impregnated. There's scriptural written from the Ethiopian perspective where God showed in a vision that Israel would move from Israel to Ethiopia because of everything that was happening with Ethiopia. So we're talking about multicultural royal families coming together. I understand what you're saying, and I understand the traditions. And again, Empress Menenin and His Majesty are part of the royal house. So he was one of the first monarchs to ever be coordinated with his wife, which was a whole nother thing that we can get into their history on how they were like a opening eye for Africans all across the world. But I understand what you're saying on that. We can really unpack that. I kind of got distracted because there was so much. Rich, go ahead, babe. Go ahead, my love.
I'll just say one quick thing because all that's irrelevant.
What is?
I think whatever she was saying was kind of irrelevant. I think I overstood you say that Ethiopia is not Israel in the sense of like they didn't suffer
go ahead.
the curses. I understand. I can't agree with that because Ethiopia is is an actual nation.
I don't hear you.
Oh, you don't hear me? You hear me now? Or
is it Yakoba? Can you hear him? He's breaking up.
He's low. He's low.
Oh, okay. Maybe we're in the back. Can you hear him right now? Can you hear him now?
I hear you, New Being, better than I hear him.
But let me ask you, Yakoba, do you hear like crackling when New Being me speaks? I'm just wondering, is it me or what?
Is this?
Yeah, go ahead again.
Is this better?
We're in the mountains.
Yeah, say something again.
No, excuse me, please. Please, excuse me. The fan's gonna turn on. It's gonna be very loud in there. Is this better?
I can hear you better, but there is a little popping in the back, but I can hear you better.
Okay. What was being said was irrelevant in a very specific way. Ethiopia, okay, they're not Israel. I understand, and I can't agree with that. Why? Because they're an actual nation, and they did not suffer the curses. This is what I was hearing, and that is true. But it can be considered this national bride that was preserved and protected from those same curses that struck Israel because of that same promise that God had made to Israel. He told Moses on 2 occasions, said, God said to Moses, I'll make a greater nation of you, Moses. And that would have to mean his descendancy, So, there's that to keep in mind. And all throughout Deuteronomy, where I put my name, and then there's a promise that the curses would not, would not affect those that kept to a certain, as humanly possible to a certain extent to keep his word, and those curses would not affect them. So all I'm saying is, yes, I could agree that Ethiopia is not Israel, but it definitely is those people that mixed in so much with Israel that who can tell the difference? We have all these Kenites that play the biggest role like in Israel's history, from 2 people making it into the promised land that were 40 years or older, one of them being son of Jephunneh, a Kenite, to Othniel that took Asa after having conquered the city of the book or something, for like First Judges, I believe. You know, he's a Kenite. All throughout Chronicles, like you see like the Kenites have the most inheritance. You know, like so. That's all I was gonna say. I do agree that Ethiopia may not be Israel, but where do you like draw the line as to how much they mixed into that?
So, you know, the scripture says the curses will be identify Israel forever, right? And so if you look at some of the people who were in Gondor, right? A lot of those were the Israelites who were, you know, the ones who discriminated against, who are poverty stricken, you know, things like that. Whereas you had people, you know, like Haile Selassie and their line, they were rulers, right? And so the Bible says that Esau is the end of the world, Jacob is the beginning of that which follows. So according to the scriptures, if you know, depending upon your understanding of that verse, that Esau will be ruling. And so if you look at the history of the empress and the emperors of Ethiopia, you know, even the British monarchy and some of the European monarchy would come before them and bow, right? And so that just don't make sense to me, especially when we were all under the curses. So we know after 70 AD, we know Herod and the Edomites were ruling. Some of the Pharisees were Edomites. And my theory is that, you know, some of the Edomites were still ruling. And so, you know, that is who was ruling Ethiopia at the time. Now, to me, like I said, I like Haile Selassie, right? I think he was a great guy. But I'm not sure he was Israel because the curses.
So
Okay.
I like to add my opinion.
No,
So
that I can agree with that from the perspective that like, okay, Ethiopia is a sacrifice because look at it now. It's not the same and it never will be. They did serve its purpose. They did serve as a center in this world where all the rest of us that were under a foreign rule, you know, like a colonization, slavery, it served as a place still ruled by the authority of God, whether one's accepted or not, you know.
Oh yeah,
It,
I think Ethiopia was great because
so
they
we
kept
could
the
look to,
colonizers out.
yeah, we could look to and say, no. We our claim to humanity is valid because, and then we have the example of Ethiopia, but then again they've been sacrificed, but it lived long enough so that us in the West could like have that evidence to prove, right? And so like yes, I could also accept the claim that the relationship with Esau and stuff like that, because it is a turn. It is a change in time. And if
I don't understand 73. Explain 73.
well, yeah, I just said that. Like it's not the same thing. Now Ethiopia's been sacrificed. It's a change. They're no longer what they once were. I could see how what you're saying about the change in in power. I wasn't around 3,000 years ago, and I don't have the documentation to say, his Ali Selassie first, or actually the first power of the Trinity, because that's what the name translates to if we want to say it in English. So I don't
And
know
let,
what the first. I
and
don't
let
know
me
what the
throw
first.
something at you right quick. Is that you saw when Prince Charles got coronation?
No, I did not.
Okay, so he had the globe in his hand with the cross on it and the scepter. You know, Haile Selassie and them had the same globe and scepter. So there's a relationship there. And I think Minister Tay, you had a question or comment.
well,
Okay,
yeah,
I
I wanted to
mean,
give my
yeah,
opinion for one. So hold on. So
yes, sir.
I mean, I don't think the king was Esau, right? But I don't think that at all. And I think it all depends on too whether or not we can have we can verify whether the Kibra Nagas has any value as far as historical references. That's the question. We don't know. But like say based on your example, there was some mixing with the Israelites, and according to the Kibra Nagas, right, you got the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon, and producing Menelik. We don't really have all that as verifiable evidence. It is historical in the Ethiopian culture. So maybe, there's a connection there with the people who worship the Most High, went to Jerusalem, right? The eunuch of Ethiopia, right? So there's already a historical relationship there that goes beyond the idea of Esau, right? But they're not necessarily Israel, but we have a long history where that area, or at least those people who we call Ethiopians, help protect Israel in many times. So, it's clear according to I forgot his name, that the Jews were all in Ethiopia at the time. What's his name, Yakoba?
Eldad.
Eldad the Danite. Yeah. So we had various tribes that were at some time documented to have been in that area. So clearly some stayed, some of them mixed. How would we identify that group today if they're not practicing?
Okay. So yeah, so let's have this as a final question, Nubian.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I think that was your final question, but I'm just going to add and let Alonso finish up. Keturah is definitely a part of the Sheba, Queen of Sheba, that connection in terms of Abraham. But then I'm going to let him answer that question, and we can have later back.
Oh, it was a question.
I think he was.
A lot of this has to deal, unfortunately, with faith. Listen, in all the world, these people have a sanctuary, that they call the temple type. It's a church, if you may be, but the first power of the Trinity would say that the church is not merely a building, but the faithful fulfillment of the Christian life and its requirements. Thus, the heart of the faithful, where God dwells. Now, what advice does he give to us? Is to follow the 10 commandments. Now, these people in their temples, I already said that is okay. Well, to live in this healthy life, this Christian life, is what makes me follow Jesus Christ. This is what the first power of the Trinity says, and these are all summaries of a Lutheran Hour Dr. Oswald Hoffman interview called Christmas in Ethiopia. So this is a quick summary of what he accepts. Jesus Christ, or Yeshua HaMashiach, he accepts the 10 commandments, and the church is us, the human body, where God dwells in our heart, like the faithful fulfillment of that life. But now, looking to Ethiopia, I cannot prove that they are blood, DNA, whatever, because neither do I understand all that information, neither do I know what sample they're taking from to compare with and say this sample is Israel for sure. And so everything must align to what this sample says. So I don't know what that sample is and who they took it from. Neither do I understand those high sciences, right? But I do see that in Ethiopia, they have a temple very much like we read in the Old Testament, where there's an outer court, a holy place, a holy of holies. And they still to this day reverence very highly this idea of having those tablets that Moses brought down from the mountain, and they revere them in the same manner. They take them out on very special occasions,
So you're talking about the Tawahedo Church?
Yes, I'm just saying that that's what I know because I can see it. They've maintained a lot of these practices that Israel at one point in time exercised.
Oh yeah, they do.
And the current Orthodox Church is an apostasy.
The current church, I could care less for it. It was something that it was a place that God did something with through, and for some time that's not the same thing now. That's as far as I can go. I could just if we would to take time and just speak about these things, we could go into details as to different questions and stuff like that. Listen, God is perfect, but man isn't. When he works and does a work with our involvement, our participation, the work turns out to be affected by our inability to be perfect as he is. So there's some missing things. There's some questions in between. There's some cloudiness, but those things one has to overcome for themselves. I mean,
yeah. So for me, I leave it open, right? Because I don't know everything. I just have questions, right? And so, like, my opinion, is that maybe that some of them were Edomites, but I don't know that for sure, right? It's just based upon what the Bible says about curses and all these things and how I see it. Now, maybe there is something that else is going on there, because I'm gonna say this: Ethiopia has played a major role in keeping the colonizers from taking over the entire continent. So there's a
And the
purpose and a
world.
role for them, right? So
Well, yeah, I mean, look, for me, I don't think they're Edomites at all. I think the history shows that they are Cush or of Ham, something like that, but that they have historically been Israel's allies, according to the Bible, right? That's how I see it. Okay, and now
some
the only problem I have is that there is a history of oppression of the Jews in that area back in before 1980s. And now I understand that the Tigrayans were behind that. I think y'all could correct me if I'm wrong, but was
73,
what?
a
Hold
lot of
on, hold on, hold on, hold
propaganda.
on. No, it's true what he's
Okay.
saying.
Yes, true.
Continue. Excuse me.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah. So what was Haile Selassie an Amhara or Tigrayan, and was he also involved in hurting the Jews that were there? Would y'all know that?
The I could partially answer that. Okay, it is true. The Jewish population does have a record of being made less to a certain extent. Once again, this is a country that accepts that in their history they too were that, and they made the transition to accept the one that the same God that both believe in had sent as his son. So they look, so unfortunately, that is part of our human behavior in which God is perfect, but we tend to act in an imperfect way and affect the whole, outcome of the matter. As far as small details, yes, perhaps, and I can't say this with complete defense. Hold on. Yes, they were, made less and stuff like that, but the context in a way would be that the Christian exalted himself by thinking perhaps he can do that to the other because he accepted Christ as the Son of God, and these people who they now see as less were once just like them, but now have fallen back because of their unbelief. Now that's as far as like their mistreatment and all that kind of stuff. um Again, there's the history around the 900 1000 AD. There's the rise of Judith and the Jewish kingdom that revolted and actually destroyed so many temples, so many monasteries, churches, to redeem the country to her faith, the Jewish faith. There's that history. So many manuscripts were destroyed by her, you know. But here's a funny thing about their relationship. The the Falashas, as they're referred to, the Jews that were in Ethiopia, they actually don't, their scriptures, they rely on the Tewahedo Church's scriptures because they agree. Well, as far as like their Old Testament type thing. I say that because it's not only like the same amount of books that we have here, but they kind of consider Judges and other books as like, it's more like it's like 8 instead of Pentateuch. It would be like, I think it's like 8 total books. So there's that little difference, but they still are okay with the ones that the official Tewahedo Church, like prints. And so there's that relationship, even though they're made less by them. I don't know to what extent it has to be an individual like basis. Some people are worse than others. We can't like be we can't overcome that, right? Now, the Tigranians and Tigray, Eritrea. Now, there's something that ones have to understand. You see, when Menelik the second in the 1800s or 1900s, towards 1900, when he was ruling, it came to a point where he was in a situation where he had to give in somehow to survive and perhaps fight another day. Now his contribution to this whole like Eritrea and because and I relate that with Tigray, with Tigray, because Eritrea and them are closer than you would think, as to like more of like the other part of Ethiopia. But anyways, Eritrea was a piece of land that was given by not willingly and so happily, but to survive, to survive the pressures that surrounded Ethiopia. You're full, the whole continent has been colonized, you're still alive. So he ceded a part of Ethiopia, which was the door to the ocean, which was the part of Eritrea. And from that time, from like um just before like 1900s, or around that time, like Eritrea became a part of Italy, and that area has been ruled by Italy ever since. So now they did develop a colonized type, you could say, roughly mentality. They did come under foreign rule, and then somehow passed a generation that forgot the change, the transition, and bore a newer generation that now just experienced this identity for granted, like this is what we are, this is how it is. And thus the situation now, this idea that somehow Eritreans and Ethiopians are different, and this whole battle between them, I think that's necessary to point out. I forgot the reason why. Now, is Haile Selassie the first power of the Trinity? Is he directly a part of the mistreatment, or making less of the Jewish population? I I can't say like definitively or conclusively, because neither do I have documentation or evidence to point out where he was directly associated with the mistreatment or abuse of like the Jewish communities. Neither do I have anything in defense of him. I can say this, that the Emperor of Ethiopia, as soon as he had complete control and power, the first thing that he had done for the people, that he was already thinking since like 1915, was grant the people a written constitution, and therefore involve them and include them in the participation of government. Now, why is that important? It's important because one of the greatest enemies that the Emperor of Ethiopia ever had was the very rulers, rightfully so, perhaps not blood related to Edomites, but in their behavior, perhaps very much identical or surpassing Edomites or Esauites, however we wish to describe people that are bad, being bad. They were a great enemy of the Emperor of Ethiopia, because what the emperor was doing is taking from them the inherited power that they had shared and owned for so long, and they did not want to either give up the power or and lose it. So, and why is that important to mention? Well, because when the constitution was established and the people had rights, and the rights were not respected or even exercised or practiced everywhere, because it took good people to be good. And most rulers, in fear of losing their economic stability and property interest, would never implement those rules. Now, this country is so far behind in progress that it becomes impossible for the emperor of that same country to enforce these. It's a gradual development, because, for instance,
So let's
so if you passed
pause. Hold
rules,
on. Let's pause
yeah,
right here, because maybe we could do another show where we could discuss the history of Ethiopia. But we've been 2 hours, so I want to thank y'all for coming on, and it's time for bed.
I understand. Just trying to say that he made laws, people didn't necessarily follow them, and it was very hard to make sure that they did. That was a problem, and he does take fault for that, and he is guilty in that he inherited a very poor, ancient, culturally rich kingdom, but very backwards in modern progress, and that's his struggle, you know. So like, thank you for your time. That
All
was
right.
that was to answer that question. Is he a part of the mistreatment of the Jews? Well, he's the leader, and he would take full responsibility, like
I
Okay.
like
like
he
that
did
answer.
for World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
thank you guys for
Thank you all.
thank you guys for your
We
patience with
appreciate it.
me and my husband's spicy conversations. It be spicy
All
here
right.
at the house. We be debating, we be opening up the scriptures, we looking at historic.
Hey, look,
So
reach out.
he's the expert in this one. He's the
Feel
expert
free to
in this
reach
one.
out to us and email us, and we
Yes.
can have we can do this behind the scenes and
No
get
problem, because
together
it's
and talk about
long.
it some more.
It's a
Yeah.
long. He's a professor when it comes to this stuff, and it's
Yeah.
our family story. And I thank the Most High that
Okay.
he's on it. So thank you everyone for listening,
All right.
and I
Thank
appreciate
y'all.
your
All right.
patience.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Okay.
So as you all can see, you know, my brother and I don't agree on everything. You know, I think you know, because the Amharic they came into being in the 14th century, I believe, and I believe that, you know, they could have been like a mixture of people. Who knows, right? And so, based upon the fact of the rulership of Haile Selassie, and the fact he had that same globe that Prince Charles had in his hand with the cross on it and the scepter, tells me there's a relationship to that rulership, right? To Rome, right? So I'm leaning towards you know, Esau, but I don't know. It's just a lot of stuff now. You know, like I say, I personally liked Haile Selassie because I think he did a lot to help our people. But if you look at the history during his reign, as the brother was saying, we were being, you know, Jews were being persecuted under his reign. But remember, the Italians had taken over, and the Italians were persecuting as well. And so, you know, there's I guess a big dynamic to that whole situation. But you know, we got a lot to learn. We got a lot to learn about that history. Final comments, Mr. T.
Yeah, I like to add that you know, I'm slow to judgment on Haile Selassie, and as far as him being Esau, right? I don't see anything that can tie him to Esau outside of the fact that his Christianity has a Roman influence, and that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has Roman influences everywhere. So clearly, there's a ancient connection to Rome, apparently, and I think that's where that orb comes from. But on top of that, though, that orb existed in Egypt before Rome, so it's been around a while, but it is still somehow came into Christianity through the Roman Catholic Church. So the fact that they do have practices very similar to Rome, they're the way they decorate their churches, the way the king was ordained, and he had that orb of, you know, the orb that means world dominance, that the British king had, that Prince Charles had, that Haile Selassie had, right? They both had this, so it does raise a question. But let me. I'm the king of using Chat GPT, right? So I asked Chat GPT. I said, "Did Haile Selassie abuse the Falasha Jews?" Now I'm gonna read this to you, but I think the conclusion is exactly what Nubi and me husband said. That basically, I think it was the Ethiopian Orthodox Church that did it, but it was under his reign, so he takes responsibility. But it says this: there have been allegations of discrimination and mistreatment of the Falasha Jews, also known as Beta Israel, during the reign of Emperor Haile Selassie. However, the extent to which Haile Selassie himself was directly involved in these actions is a matter of debate among historians and scholars. The Falasha Jews were a minority group in Ethiopia who practiced a unique form of Judaism that incorporated elements of Ethiopian culture and religion. They faced discrimination and marginalization from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and other dominant ethnic groups in Ethiopia, and they were often subject to restrictions on their religious practices and movements. So that sounds like exactly what happened during the Inquisition. I continue. During Haile Selassie's reign, there were several instances of violence and persecution against the Falasha Jews. In 1937, for example, a group of Falasha Jews were forcibly converted to Christianity. Sound like what? The Inquisition. And some were killed in the process. The government also imposed restrictions on their movements and activities, Inquisition, including prohibiting them from owning land and practicing certain professions, Inquisition. However, it is important to note that Haile Selassie also took steps to improve the status of the Falasha Jews. He reportedly intervened on their behalf in several instances of violence and discrimination, and he established a government agency to oversee their welfare and integration into Ethiopian society. Overall, the question of whether Haile Selassie personally abused the Falasha Jews is difficult to answer definitively. While there were instances of discrimination and violence against the Falasha Jews during his reign, it is unclear to what extent Haile Selassie himself was directly involved in these actions and whether his government's policies towards the Falasha Jews were positive or negative overall. So sort of like the brother Nubi and me husband said, he could take responsibility for that persecution under his rule. But you can see based on this comment or this response that it was the Ethiopian Orthodox Church that persecuted them, and which makes sense because most Christians, especially those who have elements of Catholicism, will reject the Jews because the Jews have a history of killing Christ, right? So same thing they're doing here parallels what Rome was doing in the first century to the Jews when Constantine and them started forming the Catholic Church. So we see similar behavior that we can directly tie to what happened in the early formation of the Catholic Church and also the Inquisition. So clearly, and you can look at the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, they have a lot of elements of what we could call Catholicism. But that doesn't necessarily make them Esau. But I digress.
Yeah, well, it's all theoretical, and I look at the fact that Herod ruled, during the time of Christ, and he was king of Israel, right? Or, and so I Rome was still in power after 70 AD and controlled the land. I would think that that position would probably continue, but I'm just guessing. So thank you all who did come on and who had questions, and we might do a Q&A if y'all want to discuss this even further and ask questions. So once again, thank y'all for coming on. And, when you do your research, please follow the scientific method of research, because this is why we're always going to butt heads, because, we're adhering to the academic side of things, whereas some of you all just go by your feelings. So peace and blessings, Israel. Your captivity is ending. Love you with the love of Messiah. If you want to support us, you can by becoming a patron or Cash App. And also, please support the Dry Bones Project. And thank you, Minister Tate.